It's the late 1990s, a long stretch of highway somewhere in the American Midwest. A Dodge Ram rumbles past, hauling a fully loaded horse trailer like it weighs nothing. The driver barely touches the throttle. The engine doesn't scream, it just pulls. Smooth, relentless, almost effortless. Most people see that truck and think, yeah, it's strong. But what almost nobody knows is that strength didn't come from brute force alone. It came from a quiet evolution, a series of smart, almost stubborn engineering decisions, and a V8 engine that wasn't supposed to become a legend. Because the truth is, the 5.9 Magnum wasn't built to dominate. It became America's favorite tow engine by accident, and what happened next changed everything. To understand the 5.9 Magnum, you have to go back to a time when Dodge wasn't winning anything. The late 1980s, early 1990s, Ford had its 5.8 Windsor. Chevy had the 350 small block. Both proven, both everywhere. Both trusted by contractors, farmers, and anyone who needed real work done. Dodge? Dodge was struggling. Their trucks weren't seen as serious competitors. Their engines felt outdated, underpowered, behind the curve. Walk into any construction site back then, and you'd see mostly blue ovals and bow ties. Maybe one or two Dodge trucks, usually older ones, usually owned by guys who got them cheap or inherited them from family. The brand had a reputation problem. Not that their trucks couldn't work, they could, but nobody talked about them the way they talked about Ford reliability or Chevy simplicity. Dodge was the third option, the backup plan, the well, it was on sale choice. And in the truck world, that's a brutal place to be. And then came the decision that would flip everything. Instead of building something entirely new, Dodge engineers looked at what they already had. The LA small block V8. Simple, rugged, old school. This engine family had been around since the 1960s. It had powered everything from muscle cars to work vans. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't high-tech, but it was proven. And that mattered, because starting from scratch costs money, time, resources. And Dodge didn't have the luxury of any of those. So they asked one question: what if we modernize it just enough? That's where the Magnum story begins. The 5.9 Magnum, also known as the 360 Magnum, carried over the same basic architecture as the older LA engine. Same 4.4-inch bore, same 3.58-inch stroke. That gave it a displacement of 360 cubic inches, about 5.9 liters. Nothing revolutionary there. The block was still cast iron, heavy, old-fashioned by 1990s standards. But under the surface, everything was different. They redesigned the cylinder heads with high-swirl combustion chambers. This improved air-fuel mixing, which meant better efficiency and stronger low-end torque, exactly what a truck engine needed. The ports were reshaped, optimized for flow without going overboard, because in a truck engine, you don't want maximum airflow at high RPM. You want consistent, predictable flow at the speeds where people actually drive, between 1,500 and 4,000 RPM. That's where towing lives. That's where the Magnum focused. Compression ratio, around 8.9.1. Conservative, safe, built to run on regular fuel without knocking. Because the last thing a guy pulling a boat at 6 a.m. wants to worry about is finding premium fuel in the middle of nowhere. Horsepower, about 245 HP in early versions. But that number doesn't tell the real story. Torque does, around 335 lb-ft, and more importantly, it came in low, right where towing happens. Because when you're pulling 8,000 pounds up a hill, horsepower doesn't matter. Torque does, and the Magnum delivered it in a way that felt almost unfair. Flat torque curve, broad power band, pull from just off idle all the way to redline, not peaky, not temperamental, just there. But there was a problem. Early testing showed something concerning. At sustained loads, long uphill pulls, heavy trailers, high temperatures, the engine would start to struggle. Oil temperatures climbed, valve train wear increased, and in some cases, the engine just didn't feel as durable as it needed to be. Engineers ran simulations, pushed prototypes to the limit, monitored wear patterns over thousands of test miles. The data was clear. This engine could handle short bursts, quick acceleration, normal driving. But put it behind a 9,000-pound fifth wheel for 6 hours straight in Arizona heat? It wasn't there yet. For a tow engine, that's a death sentence. So the engineers went back to work. They revised the oiling system, improved cooling passages in the block and heads, strengthened internal components like the crankshaft and connecting rods to handle continuous load instead of short bursts. The crankshaft was forged, not cast, stronger, better able to handle constant stress. Main bearing sizes were increased slightly, more surface area, better load distribution. The camshaft profile was adjusted, not for peak power, but for durability and consistency under load. They weren't building a race engine. They were building something harder, an engine that could survive hours of punishment, day after day, year after year, without complaining, without braking, without making the driver wonder if they'd make it home. And then came the intake system. Instead of sticking with older carbureted designs, the Magnum used multi-point fuel injection, controlled by a relatively simple but effective engine management system. It wasn't flashy, but it was precise. Each cylinder got its own injector, timed perfectly, measured exactly. Fuel delivery improved, throttle response sharpened. Cold starts became reliable, even in harsh winters. Minnesota in January? No problem. Texas in August? The same. And for truck owners, that mattered, because reliability isn't exciting until you don't have it, until you're standing in a parking lot at 5 a.m. trying to get to a job site and the engine fires on the first turn of the key. That's when you appreciate good engineering, not when someone's talking about it, when it just works. By the early 1990s, Dodge dropped the 5.9 Magnum into their redesigned Ram trucks, and that's when everything changed. The trucks themselves were bold, aggressive styling, big rigs for everyday drivers. They looked different, stood out. The front end was inspired by big rigs. The fenders were flared. The stance was wide and confident. But the real magic was under the hood. Drivers started noticing something. This engine didn't feel like it was working hard, even when it was. Pulling a loaded trailer, no drama, climbing steep grades, just steady, controlled power, passing on the highway with weight behind you, a gentle press of the pedal, and there it was. It didn't scream like a small block Chevy. It didn't rev like a Ford. It just pulled, like a diesel. And that comparison, that's when things got interesting. Because diesel engines had always owned the towing world. Massive torque, built for heavy loads, long lifespan, Cummins, Power Stroke, Duramax. These were the names people knew, but they were expensive and loud, and for a lot of buyers, unnecessary. You had to ask yourself, do I really need a $6,000 diesel option if I'm towing a camper twice a month? Most people didn't. The 5.9 Magnum quietly stepped into that gap. Gas engine price, diesel-like behavior, and suddenly, people had a new favorite, a middle ground that didn't feel like a compromise. But the real test came on the road. Contractors started using them for daily work. Landscapers, ranchers, boat owners hauling massive loads across states, and the reports started coming in. Engines hitting 150,000 miles, 200,000 miles, still pulling strong, minimal issues. One mechanic in Nevada reportedly said, "We opened one up after 180,000 miles. The cylinder walls still looked clean. Bearings were worn, sure, but nothing catastrophic. Just normal wear. Thing could have gone another 100,000 easy." That kind of durability doesn't happen by accident. It comes from design choices, like thick cylinder walls that could handle heat and pressure, a sturdy cast iron block that didn't flex under load, and conservative tuning that prioritized longevity over peak numbers. The valve springs weren't overly stiff, reduced wear on the camshaft. The piston rings were designed for long-term seal, not maximum compression. Oil capacity was generous, 5 quarts, enough to stay cool during hard pulls. Every choice was deliberate. Every spec was tested against one question: will this last? But there was a catch, and this is where the story gets complicated. The Magnum had a known weakness: the intake plenum gasket. Over time, it would fail. When it did, oil would get sucked into the intake, causing pinging, oil consumption, and performance loss. Drivers noticed it. Mechanics complained about it. Message boards lit up with discussions about replacement intervals and aftermarket fixes, and yet it didn't kill the engine's reputation. Why? Because even with that flaw, the engine kept going. Fix the gasket, and it was back to work. The repair wasn't complicated: a few hours, $100 in parts if you did it yourself. And once it was done, the truck ran like nothing ever happened. That kind of forgiveness is rare. Most engines have a flaw that becomes a death sentence, a weakness that spirals into catastrophic failure. The Magnum's flaw was annoying, but it wasn't fatal, and truck owners can forgive a lot, as long as the engine doesn't leave them stranded. Meanwhile, competitors were chasing higher horsepower numbers. Ford pushed output, more RPM, more peak power. Chevy refined efficiency, better fuel economy, lighter components. Both strategies made sense, but Dodge, they stayed focused. Torque, durability, simplicity, and it paid off. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, the 5.9 Magnum had become the go-to choice for gas-powered towing. Not because it was the most advanced, but because it was the most trusted. Word of mouth started to spread. One guy tells his neighbor tells his coworker mentions it at the parts store. Before long, the 5.9 Magnum had a reputation that Dodge's marketing department couldn't have bought. It was earned, mile by mile, load by load. And then came the numbers that really told the story. Properly equipped Dodge Ram trucks with the 5.9 Magnum could tow over 8,000 pounds. Some configurations pushed closer to 10,000. Fifth-wheel setups, gooseneck trailers, fully loaded car haulers. The truck didn't care. Hook it up. Check your mirrors. Go. Quarter-mile times? Not impressive. Around 16-17 seconds. Top speed? Irrelevant. 0 to 60? Somewhere north of 9 seconds. None of that mattered, because this engine wasn't built to race. It was built to work, and in that role, it was nearly perfect. The transmission options helped too. The automatic, usually a 46 Re or 47 Re, was built tough, handled power well, shifted predictably under load. The rear axle ratios were geared for pulling, not speed. 355 or 3.92 gears kept the engine in its power band. Everything worked together: engine, trans, gearing, suspension. A complete system designed around one job: get the load there, every time. But as with all legends, change was coming. By the early 2000s, emissions regulations tightened. Fuel efficiency became a bigger concern, and newer engine designs started to emerge. Overhead cam layouts, more advanced electronics, better airflow designs, variable valve timing. The Magnum, with its pushrod design and aging architecture, started to show its age. It couldn't meet the new emission standards without major changes, and those changes would have cost more than just starting fresh. Production began to phase out. By 2003, the era of the Magnum V8 was coming to an end. Dodge introduced the new Hemi, a modern engine with a legendary name. More power, cleaner emissions, better technology. On paper, it was superior in every way, and just like that, the Magnum was gone. But not forgotten, because something interesting happened after production stopped. The trucks kept running. Years later, you could still find them on job sites, still towing, still hauling, still doing exactly what they were built to do. Trucks with 200,000 miles still pulling trailers like they had 50,000. Guys who could afford newer trucks stuck with their old Rams. "Why would I replace it?" one owner said. "Thing runs perfect. I know it. Trust it. New truck's just a payment I don't need." And that's when the legend really took hold. Not during production, but after. When the true test of an engine isn't the first year, it's the 10th, the 15th, when the warranty's long gone and all that's left is the engineering. Today, the 5.9 Magnum has a kind of quiet respect in the automotive world. It's not flashy, it's not rare, it doesn't have a massive aftermarket following like the LS or the Coyote, but it's remembered as the engine that showed you don't need massive horsepower to win. You need the right kind of power, delivered at the right time, in the most reliable way possible. So what made the 5.9 Magnum so special? It wasn't cutting-edge technology. It wasn't record-breaking performance. It was balance. A 4.0-inch bore and 3.58-inch stroke that delivered consistent torque. A modest compression ratio that ensured reliability. A fuel system that prioritized control over complexity. And a design philosophy that put real-world use above everything else. No gimmicks, no compromises for the sake of a spec sheet. Just honest engineering built around a simple idea. Make it work, make it last, and make it trustworthy. That's not exciting in a showroom, but it's everything on a job site. It didn't just tow heavy loads, it earned trust. And in the world of trucks, that matters more than anything, because a truck isn't a status symbol for most people. It's a tool, a partner, something you depend on when the job needs to get done, and the 5.9 Magnum understood that, better than almost any engine of its time. The engineers who built it probably didn't realize what they'd created. They were just trying to compete, to survive, to give Dodge a fighting chance in a market dominated by Ford and Chevy. They took an old engine and made it relevant again. And in the process, they created something that outlasted its own production run by a decade, maybe longer, because even now in 2024, you can still find 5.9 Magnum-powered Rams out there, quieter than the new trucks, simpler, maybe a little rough around the edges, but still working, still pulling, still proving that sometimes the best engine isn't the fastest, it's the one that just keeps going. If you enjoyed this story, let me know what you want to dive into next. Another legendary engine, a forgotten failure, or a rivalry that changed the industry. And if you love deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe, because there's always another story hiding under the hood.